Hello, hello. Welcome back to another week of CELTA. Okay, so week 9. We had 2 sessions on Tuesday, input sessions, which were phonology, focused on connected speech, and my first, kind of second, I guess, my session on functional language. Then we had regular TPs. And actually this week was the last week for TP4. So one teacher was teaching her TP4 and the other 3 teachers were doing unassessed lessons. So kind of fun lessons. Let's dig into the input sessions. So input sessions, we went through connected speech, an hour and a half per usual. We did focus on elision, assimilation, catenation, intrusion, and weak forms. So this was good because it was a nice jump off for me that was focusing on functional language. I'll tell you why in a second. So first, the tutor started with, I have notes over here, sorry, not going to look at you. Started with what is connected speech and the different types that we see in weak forms. Pretty much they were sent into breakout rooms for the majority. It was like in and out of breakout rooms with lots of tasks to do. They were given like transcribed examples of problems. And then they were looking at those transcriptions because obviously they weren't correct. And then what could have possibly gone wrong where the students, made an issue. Like, what is a yapple? An apple. Yeah, it was just, anyways, it was interesting. Like they transcribed the errors, but it was kind of like they transcribed it in the way that the student said it. And then obviously there was connected speech that they didn't understand the connected speech. And then it turned into different words. Anyways, okay. So they were working with those. And first we were just identifying, okay, so this is the location where the connected speech obviously happened, where there was miscommunication, the student didn't understand. And then afterwards, the tutor went into the specific features and labeling them with their technical terms, etc., and finding out like, when does this happen and what does it sound like? And then going back to in and out of breakout rooms, in and out of the whole room discussion. They had hands-on activities where they were reading some model sentences with IPA transcriptions, and they had to identify the connected speech features, etc., etc. So it was a lot of just kind of hands-on, looking at examples, trying to figure it out, listening, that type of thing. And yes, so this session, I took a note of this. This session was extremely important for these teachers because this specific group of teachers on their first assignment, I think there was 3 people out of the group that didn't have to resubmit. And all of them, even the ones that had that passed on the first go round, all of them had some issues or discrepancies in the phonology section. So this was, again, extremely important because when they were analyzing individual words, it was fine. But as soon as you give them phrases, there was issues because they were not able to identify features of connected speech. It was good though. They did well. They were able to kind of pick it up. And I think that it was very helpful because then I did my session on functional language. So functional language, I pretty much described it to them. And we're talking about how the language is not focused on form, how the language is focused on function, and that we can have many linguistic representations of the same or similar functions, and how to deal with those, and how to prepare lesson plans with those as well. And one of the key things, especially for language analysis, which is something that the teachers are kind of struggling with, not struggling with, but they're not embracing as much as as I would say, like I kind of love doing language. I'm a little bit of a loser though. I love doing language analysis because it makes me super confident in the classroom. But yes, so they were tasked to actually, after we went through, to actually develop a lesson just like stages, nothing like extremely detailed. It was not necessary, but they were tasked to also look at the language analysis section of the target language that they came up with for an activity. The activity was complaining, by the way. It was just like a throwaway activity that was on the internet, you know, it's like the stereotypical places that you find like free lesson plans and free activities. And it had lots of like different scenario cards for a B1 level, but they had to complain about services or products or something like that. And then the teachers had to develop the lesson based on that. So I think it was really good because one of the things with language analysis for functional language is that not only do we focus on the meaning of it, the function, like what is this doing? We also have to look at the form, and we have to look at are these are these single words, fixed phrases, semi-fixed phrases? What can we change? And we also have to look at what comes before and after them. Just something that these teachers are not considering at this point, which is not a requirement, but at this point. Okay, so then also with the pronunciation factor of it, when we look at phonology and all of that good stuff, because these are, sometimes they're single words, but because they usually are phrases, we have to look at connected speech features. We have to look at, you know, weak forms and all of that good stuff. And it is like one of the main focuses. So the sessions that the main course tutor had set up with the other tutor and myself actually were very complimentary because they had just seen all of the connected speech features. And then they were tasked to come up with some target language that was a function and then analyze it and really dig into connected speech features. So it was quite practical for them. Then Thursday. I was a disaster on Thursday. Something happened with my computer. I mean, I've been having technical issues for like a while now. I think it's operator error, but I wasn't able to log in like 100% completely. It was a bit of a mess. Anyways, but the three teachers who were not being assessed taught short lessons. They taught like 30-minute lessons, I think it was. Yeah, like 30-minute lessons. And we told them the previous week that it would be interesting if they are receiving feedback on things and they're still quite uncomfortable because they're going to be unassessed. They should do something that would be like fun and interesting, maybe a game, but kind of like test out new things for themselves. I don't know if that happened because I did just see partial of it, but yeah, so that would be a recommendation for people who are taking the CELTA. If you're doing unassessed lessons, not your first ones, I mean, obviously you're trying to get to know the students, but at the end, sometimes you do unassessed lessons because there's extra time and the students need to have a class. If you're doing an unassessed lesson, I would say that it would be interesting for you to experiment with things you're uncomfortable with or to try things that you've been getting feedback for. Just a thought. And then we had the fourth person, the fourth teacher who was doing her TP4. And I don't think, let me see if I had any, again, hang on. If I had any notes from that were interesting. Oh, yeah. So, and she was really cool with this, but she was doing a reading lesson and the aim of her lesson was focused on speaking. So, I think this goes back to, actually, she did a reading lesson though. It was like, she just focused on the last stage of it. Like she wanted them to speak as a follow-up to the reading lesson, which was fine. But she had confused it a little bit in the main aim section, which is not a big deal. I mean, it is, but but the way that she delivered the lesson was actually a reading lesson. So anyways, here's the thing, and this is not specifically for this teacher, but this is something that I see as like a current trend, is that like we want the only way that we think that students are engaged in learning is if they're talking. We need to kind of remove this idea that the only way that students are learning, the only way that students are being productive in class is by speaking, and that's just not. I think that's the way that we gauge. Well, oh, okay, so the lesson was a good lesson only if the students are speaking, and again, this was not the case with this teacher, but this is like the way that she had made the mistake of describing the main aim as speaking, and actually her subsidiary aim was reading, so she had just flipped them. It was okay. We gave her the correction, and it made sense to her. It was fine. I think actually she might have just switched them like inadvertently in her head when she was doing the lesson plan, because she did give a reading lesson. But here's the thing, like when we back to the idea of students are only learning when they're speaking. Really? That's my question. Because I think that students are learning when they're doing lots of things. And speaking happens to be a way that's quite easy, and it's quite immediate for the teachers to assess. But they're assessing production. We're not assessing learning, because learning is a long process, and it's not something that we can assess in the immediate, right? We can't assess learning right away, because learning happens in the brain, and then we have to have like consolidation, and we have to be able to use these things over and over again. So I'm just going to kind of throw that question out there and leave it lingering around in your head. Is that the only way that we can assess their productivity or their production in class is by speaking? Because I see that many teachers, it's at the CELTA level also, but around, it's just like, it's like, well, I'm going to do this activity, and then they're going to be speaking, and I'm going to do this, and then they have to speak, and I'm going to do this, and then they have to speak again. And it's like, okay, cool. Listen, I know, like, the whole objective is that we're speaking a language. I get it. But are we neglecting other things because we're so hyper-focused on students speaking all the time? Are we neglecting building skills? Are we neglecting solidifying systems? Are we neglecting giving them time to reflect, consolidate information, or even organize information in their head? Are we giving them enough thinking time to really be able to absorb? Or are we just so hyper-focused on speaking, we want them to say it right away? That's my thought. Again, not related to this teacher's lesson. Her reading lesson was fine. She had switched it, but it made me start thinking of this hyper-focus on speaking. So I don't know if you have similar reactions or not. That's it for today. Actually, it was a pretty quick one because the rest of the lessons were unassessed and whatnot. And I will be back next week with, hang on. Oh, there was another thing that happened. Hold on. I almost completely, nope. It was just the unassessed. Oh, assignment 2 was due. That was the other thing that was going on, is that they had to start working on and deliver assignment 2 by the end of the week. So they were working on that, and that's it. And their assignments, I should say, are located in their shared drives, and they do have all of the instructions, and then they do have examples of of what the expectation is. So it does help them, though they have had questions and they have been asking for some resources in classes. So that's been going on. But other than that, that's what happened. Yeah. I'll be back for next week. What do we have? Week 10. Week 10 session. See you guys later. Bye.